Key is a visual novel studio well known for its extensive category of games, which have spawned multiple anime adaptations, at this point across decades of anime production. The notoriety of the studio is well known in Weiss Schwarz across old sets like Clannad and Angel Beats, to newer sets like Charlotte and Day I Became a God. Having notoriety and a unified catalog has also allowed it privilege, getting a collaboration set in Key 20th Anniversary, and one released late last year on December 9th in Key All-Star. This added support for pre-existing sets, but also entirely new IPs such as Canon and Air. And while there are some interesting effects and combos that can be done using the breadth of Key sets together, and some well-needed support for older sets, I couldn't help but laugh and be intrigued at what I first read when I saw Discard. As long as she's alone in the front row, at the end of her attack, she'll deal incremental damage starting from 1 until 7, and she'll sack herself. While seeming like a huge meme, and by all rights it might as well be, it isn't something to be trifled with if you believe the lists and decks going around touting this as a finisher. And while being a very funny and memey finisher, it's also beautiful in a way and makes a lot of sense in the context of Air. The important parts of Air you need to know is that Misuzu is descendant from winged beings, magical people from a time long past, and inherits a curse. There's a long messed up history where these people had been captured and used for war and generally frowned upon because racism. The story gives us a direct flashback to this time, where we see this tragic history unfold, and that comes across nicely on Kana's card, she being a winged being. The name 1000 Year Feelings is in reference to everything having happened 1000 years ago, and her effect is very on brand. She sends herself to memory when she gets reversed, a nice way to symbolize that she is in the memories, or in the past from the characters, and once she does so, you are able to look at the top Chu cards to add any characters or the puppet event. While Chu is just a number used for its similar Aqua-like effects, it's also very fitting here, since her story revolves around the Chu companions she traveled with, and also then relating to the Chu descendants left behind. One of those descendants is Misuzu, but the other is Yukito, who has been tasked by his ancestors to find a solution to the curse. He revolves around the aforementioned puppet event, with his main card letting you search or salvage for it. The event itself nets you 1 stock on play, but if you hit a clean brainstorm with no climaxes, an extra bland stock on top. We're first introduced to Yukito as a wanderer who puts on puppet shows to make money. It's kind of a whole shtick that he's poor and has to work his ass off to even make a small amount from the random kids who might come by. So it makes perfect sense that his event doesn't get him any actual card advantage, but just money, or stock. At minimum, one kid will probably like the show, so he gets that, but if he wants to make more, he needs to mill free characters. The idea here being that if enough people come by, he'll get more money. All of this will help you pay for the hefty cost of Misuzu's finisher. It's actually quite morbid how they managed to tie Misuzu's story to this card, but it works. The full name of the card is Misuzu The Last Summer Vacation, hinting at it being the last summer vacation she'll ever get. This is all shown in the last episode, where there's a summer festival that unfortunately got cancelled because of the rain, and further days of somber as the summer rolls by. However, the curse is only getting worse, and her life is dwindling. The climax represents the last moments that Misuzu has, and a very heartbreaking scene in the show. She's been essentially bound to a wheelchair as her conditions from the curse has worsened, and in one final show of her determination and perseverance, decides to get up on her own to walk towards her aunt. The key here isn't that she took exactly 7 steps, though that would be quite fitting, but that each step she takes is a little closer to her goal, and each step adds up. She takes small steps first, but as the scene plays out, the steps are much harder for her to take. She's in a great deal of pain even standing, but she endures. Symbolically to the game of Weiss Schwarz, the number 7 is the max amount in our clock, the end goal of a level. And so, it's been capped that way to represent Misuzu's final step. Of course, if she does reach her final steps, she ends up passing away, and so the final touch on this effect is that she has to send herself to the waiting room. The fact that this all happens in a private moment between them is well represented on the card as well, as to even get this effect, she has to be the only one in your front row. I also like that she has a single soul for an attack, considering that she really isn't someone who is that strong on her own, but through the strength she has and the steps she takes, can show strength. All of this is well and good, but to really get the full scope of Misuzu's card, I think it might be appropriate to learn how to count in some live games. The deck I brought to locals is technically a Key All-Stars deck, except I've opted to only use cards from Air for maximum flavor. It's also very nice of them to give us enough cards to actually make a deck with only Air cards. The best case scenario for the deck is to get one of 3 level 0s early, and the Kana who Aqua effects, the RNG Mill Runner bottom deck bomb, or this Misuzu for mill potential. In my first game I end up getting Kana, which really helped maintain a nice hand for the early game. I could have stalled here without pushing myself to level 1 and just play runners and another Kana, but I was fine getting things started early, and I was desperately looking for my Resonator. The Kana could have got me there, but I just ended up taking them as damage anyway and cried myself to level 2. Another thing with the deck that I very aptly learned was to never trust the odds. By the end of this game I was pretty much strapped for anything to do, but I could at least stall my opponent off of a finisher turn, which, even though I shot him up to level 3, he didn't have, so I was looking safe. I had all the tools in my hand for the swing back, except my deck state was looking pretty bad. The event can be used offensively to get stock, but also defensively to mill into potential cancels, which I hoped would happen here. I even fanned out my deck to get an estimate to whether I should mill down, and knowing I only had 4 in my deck, it made sense. Until I ended up milling 2 off the top and lost. If the odds can happen, they can happen. But I was poised to get this combo off on someone. Endgame, we got there with a Resonator, and I got to show off one of my favorite synergies in the deck, with the early play. The early play comes in and asks to sack a character to heal the stock, which is completely fine by me. I can sack a character to make room for my level 3, or, if I am early playing this, I can sack Michiru, who comes in with a marker. When she gets sacked, she'll immediately come back, letting you repeat this process of healing the stock. That's really good value.
Sack a character, heal the stock, because you got sacked, she comes back.
Once all the setup has been done to heal things off, it's time to do some counting.
So, if she's the only character in the front row, at the end of her attack, pay 5, ditch free, burn 1, burn 2, burn 3, burn 4, burn 5, burn 6, burn 7.
Ah, I see. This is not good.
Side, so that's for 2. Effect, pay 5, ditch free, burn 1. Burn 2, burn 3, burn 4, burn 5, burn 6, burn 7.
I can still cancel.
You can still cancel.
If the odds can happen, they can happen.
The meme worked. We learned how to count today, boy. We learned how to count today. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Learning how to count today, boys.
Unlucky.
GG.
Ran into a team kill game 3, Michael beat me, we don't talk about it. I dirtled early game, managing to stick around pretty nicely, cancelling a ton and got level stuck, but that didn't stop me from finding something to do. Michiru, while not being a great attacker, can still attack. Buffing herself during climax phase gives her at least a 1-5 body, and I'm completely fine trading because she'll come back. Not a great defense, but it does prevent me from getting direct attacked. The other thing I did a lot in this game is abusing the conditional salvages the deck is capable of. And this is how we're able to stay in the late game. By using the level 1 Misuzu, I'm able to salvage on reverse. The fact that I need to pay, it doesn't matter because I'm generating so much with the event. And here I was actually able to get what I wanted with a defensive event, milling to a cancel.
I'm also going to do it. Mash it works. Yeah. So how much was that? 2?
I'll take cut, and then I'll trigger.
Go ahead, I'm gonna do some math.
You can't tell 3, then it's like 100%.
This time it should be okay.
Has to be, right?
If I eat it, it's worse. Like, I can kill you. I can only take it.
Fine stop. And then that was for. Oh Jesus Christ! There it is.
Staving off 2 instances of damage and netting free stock, pretty good. Even with Michiru, there are other good sack targets for Minagi, that being the level 0 Misuzu who triggers when she gets sent to waiting room. If you hit a climax, you can then work off her waiting room and keep filtering. Here I get her back, so I can then sack again for Minagi, and I end up hitting again and can keep filtering. The main thing I need after this is to get my hand back, so I use one of my events which triggers both Minagis, because I also hit with my event both salvages that are pay 1, essentially just became free. The cool thing about the Clannad is that she also lets you grab the event, so I take that, and it ends up letting me do this.
I'll do it. Come here so it'll have hand on card. Hit, line stock, and then that was for. Yeah.
Then I can
It wasn't enough that I milled it right into a cancel, but because I played an event, it triggers both Minagis and I can now salvage on my opponent's turn. The funny thing about this game was that I had too much of a board. If I had no way to stack everything while keeping free cards in hand, I wouldn't be able to do my combo. But this deck is very tricky and as flavorful as it is, can get there. This first move of playing over Minagi technically isn't needed for what I was going to do, since I only needed to get rid of 2 slots. Playing Misuzu takes care of 1, but if on the off chance I don't win, I need a good deck state. I end up doing some counting here since I just wanted to be careful, so I end up milling myself down some more for safety. At the start of Climax, Clannad's first effect becomes the star of the entire game.
Beginning of Climax, I'll use my effect, I'll send her back, I'll sack her, I also pay 1, and I'll salvage.
Being able to sack a character for her effect opens up my front row. I also get a card back in return, but the main thing was making sure I have an open row to finish things up. I don't think in most cases you'll ever want to do this unless you have the Michiru as a lightning rod or the other zeros that are okay with being sacked, but that was unbelievably clutch and I was happy to get it off. My opponent was at level 2 with 4 damage, which is a lot harder to climb from my previous game where the opponent was at level 3 with 2 damage.
Effect, pay 5. It's free.
I never win against Clannad. I never win against Clannad.
Let's count. 1.
Your deck not good.
2.
This isn't the main.
1, 2.
3.
You need the other. You play the other build.
4.
I think my deck's bad against Stem. That was a
5.
Yo, you know Kevin Stemblade off 3-1 against me 2 on level 0? This guy's just a Stemblade master.
6.
Don't play slime no more. Don't play slime no more. Play Overlord when it comes out.
You need to survive both.
There's a world.
What you want to
Let's go.
You got it.
Wait, now 6. Yeah, now 6. So, you refresh and then we were at 6.
Kept playing locals.
Yeah, you can't.
Oh!
Yeah, so one more.
He's so stupid.
Okay.
I don't be suspicious.
We did it!
Am I supposed to be dying on the higher end?
It depends on the math, because the 7, you died on the 6.
Yes, sir.
I killed at 7 against my other game. You died at 6. You usually the higher end, because all the 1 to 5 snipes all the climaxes, and then you just jump to 6 and 7.
I see.
Yeah. Or if you're already lit up, then I don't want the higher end. I want the lower end. Yeah.
The combo itself is pretty dynamic in that way. If your opponent is at low damage, you want all the early stuff to cancel because you can deal 7 damage and win. Or if your opponent is at high damage, those early snipes can just end things off. There's also different permutations for how this combo can kill if your opponent is at level 3 with 0 damage. Overall, this finisher is a very fun, dynamic, and pretty flavorful way to represent the character and story of Air.